You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYPC.
CYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. We have all of the news and then some, so let's not waste any time at all. The President of the United States got out in front of the broad, wide world today and made the announcement. I want to make sure I get this exactly as he said it. Quote, Iran has just announced that the Strait of Hormuz is fully open and ready for full passage. Thank you! Exclamation point. That's in all caps from the president. Obviously, of course, he's talking about the Strait of Hormuz. And that's quite the shift. As you know, over the last week, I'm not going to give too much of a summary because that'll come in a few minutes. The Iranians have been growing more stressed at the regime level, as the United States secondary blockade did one very, very important thing that pretty much crippled any chance the Iranian regime had of kind of riding out the storm. And this was cutting off China. China no longer able to send its various container ships and then reciprocal oil tanker boats through the Strait of Hormuz for a fill-up means that Iran can't get a bunch of extra stuff. And so a couple of things started to happen. The Iranian regime started going to the extra super duper 5-alarm fire emergency supreme caches in the ground. You know, the kind of, you put something in layaway, maybe you have a box that says do not open until Christmas. Well, you had some Iranian emergency boxes that were buried deep in the depths of the deep of their darkest mountains. So far down that you would think Smeagol's crawling around there looking for the ring. And in that box, it was like, do not, whatever you do not take these out until it is the end of time. And now, the Iranian regime has sent folks in, including their 12-year-old drafted laborers, to start digging them out because they're done. Now, flipping this over, what does that have to do with the United States? Trump sent J.D. Vance over to do some negotiating and said, no uranium enrichment, reopen the Strait of Hormuz, and then a couple of other guarantees. And the Trump administration promised in return nothing. Didn't promise $20 billion in various assets unfrozen, pallets of cash. Didn't promise that. Didn't promise that the United States was going to super duper withdraw like the Iranians were demanding. And after President Xi and President Vladimir Putin of Russia left the Iranians on red, basically, opened the message, looked at it, said, that's a shame, and then put the phone back down. The Iranian regime had nowhere left to go, and they couldn't pay off the IRGC to keep doing the stuff, much less those that would be working on, like, for example, like Karg Island. So the Trump administration delivered an ultimatum, said, all right, tell you what, you agree to give us all of the uranium, no more enriching for you, open the Strait of Hormuz, and a couple of other things, and after you sign the agreement, after you write your name on the dotted line in the wrong order, because, you know, it's going to be in Farsi, Arabic, something like that, well, then we'll finally go ahead and send home the U.S. Navy. And not a moment too soon, because now joining the United States naval blockade would in fact be the Gerald R. Ford, the largest aircraft carrier in the entire world. And in case you were wondering how the U.S. Navy has been doing so far, at least in operations on the Strait of Hormuz, we're getting additional footage released from CENTCOM of the United States Navy making sure that there is not one boat, whether it be a rowboat, a journalist boat from CBS, or some of the Iranian or definitely other countries and not Chinese, differently painted flagged boats from the, landlocked nation of Botswana, trying to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. And again, definitely not Chinese. Here is a video released from CENTCOM of U.S. troops taking several of the naval craft, trying to kind of brave the Strait of Hormuz and then be turned around like an angry parent in a very loud minivan. So what do you see in there? For those who are on the radio or listening podcast side and can't see it, imagine the United States Navy doing the exact same excellent job that it does every other day of the year and continuing to do it just as flawlessly in the Persian Gulf. Now, when the president got out and announced that, again, there had been some kind of a deal reached and that the Strait of Hormuz was now open for business, flip the sign, then markets shot way, way up. Now, according to CNBC, who was kind of the live updated article that actually carried things through all day, again, in an age of where CNN no longer does a decent job of kind of tracking the financial news, they kind of treat their articles like old BuzzFeed articles full of pop-ups and nonsense. CNBC noted that the S&P 500 notched its very first close above 7,100 points ever. The NASDAQ has now posted its longest win streak in the positive since 1992. So according to their article, which is still being updated now, the S&P 500 jumped 1.2%, the NASDAQ gained 1.5% today, and the Dow gained 1.79%. It finished at 49,447. The Russell 2000 also reached a fresh high. That small cap index, which is kind of an interesting manufacturing kind of oriented and somewhat tech oriented exchange, index up to 2%. Really incredible stuff. And here's where things get really weird. The Brent crude oil, which again, you may remember 10 days ago, oil was at $109 a barrel. By 4 p.m. today, Eastern time, when the normal markets shut everything down, close up shop, $86.26. Now, again, I will point this out that here in the small eastern central Indiana town of which I'm in, I paid $4 a gallon for gas last week. And as of today, I went and filled up for $3.32. Now, again, is that where things need to be? No, but they are absolutely trending down. Now, currently, the Brent's muddling around the low 90s. It's a continuous contract, so things never truly shut off. And the reason it's bumping up a little, just a few bucks here, is because the Iranians are saying just completely the opposite, not of just the United States, of each other. So this is what's really, really bizarre. So first of all, in a post on X published Friday, Iranian Foreign Minister Sayed Abbas Araghashi wrote, quote, "In line with the ceasefire in Lebanon, the passage for all commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz is declared completely open for the remaining period of the ceasefire on the coordinated route as already announced by Ports and Maritime Organization of the Islamic Republic of Iran." So the Iranian foreign ministry got out there and said, hey, it's open. The strait is open. While the ceasefires last, it's open. The Trump administration came out and said, no, this isn't contingent on the Israeli, Lebanon, and the Hezbollah ceasefires. This is just contingent on you not wanting to starve. That's what it's contingent on. It is you not receiving the Marie Antoinette treatment from not just your own citizens, but your own Iranian army and the IRGC, the Iranian Islamic Republican Guard. Now, this is where things get really, really weird. So initially, what we saw as early as 2 hours ago, if you can see kind of on the live stream, there's a lot of east to western flowing. So this is kind of a slowed down video, but you can observe the traffic occurring kind of unimpeded, would probably be the best way to put this. And it's fine. You have a ton of boats that are rushing for the Strait of Hormuz, proceeding along all of the routes necessarily, no problem. No one's being contacted for tolls. A bunch of boats making it both in and out. And then things got a little weird because a different Iranian foreign ministry spokesperson, you're really only supposed to have like one foreign ministry spokesman, a totally different one, Ismail Baqai, then came out and said, enriched uranium is as sacred as the land and will not leave Iranian soil. I love it when the Iranians go like full Hollywood stereotype Native American. These lands were promised to us. This uranium belongs to the Chippewa tribe. No. But alas, the president of the United States had said to Reuters, quote, the Iranians and we will dig together out the enriched uranium, the nuclear dust, with large equipment comfortably and bring it to the United States. So you had one foreign minister from Iran saying, yes, things are open. You had one foreign minister saying, nuh-uh, the uranium is staying here. The IRGC came out and announced there's a loosening of restrictions, and you had to essentially call them up on the radio and say, hello, is this the Iranian regime? And they're like, this is us. Please leave a message after the that kind of a thing, and then they would let you through. Now you have a totally different head of the Iranian parliament saying something completely different, saying everything is closed, nobody's allowed, they're trying to U-turn boats. I think there's probably somebody in armed floaties out there that's trying to do like the air traffic exits are this way kind of thing. It's really bizarre. Radio crew, we're going to dig into it over here on the live stream. We'll let the radio crew head over to the commercial before the FCC takes out my kneecaps. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, why our very fine friends on the radio side are over in the radio land of fun commercials. Over on the live stream, let's talk a little bit more about this. Just an Iranian regime that's not like at odds with the U.S. Because as far as the president of the United States has said, the boats aren't moving until you sign the dotted line. Somebody's going to sign it. Who's it going to be? And take the pen. Who's it going to be? Garachi? President Pez Dispenser? My man? Well, who's it going to be? Someone's got to sign for this. Otherwise, the U.S. Navy is going to return for 2 more days, and then afterward, you're just going to have to pick it up at the post office. So the president of the United States made this clear when stepping off of the plane about talks continuing over the weekend, but saying, the Iranians can scream and cry at each other all they want, like a bad sitcom. The Navy's not leaving. The Ford just got here.
We're having a big day. We'll see how it all turns out, but it should be good. We've had some very good discussions, and hopefully that subject that you like to talk about will be very good. And we've done a good job, but we'll see. Talks are going on. It'll go on over the weekend, and a lot of good things are happening. And that includes Lebanon, too.
We'll get to some of the Lebanon stuff here in a minute because, again, it's so bizarre to see. Now, again, should I take a moment in victory lap and say, well, if, I did say that how this was going to end was with the Iranian presidential and the parliamentary offices and the IRGC coming to completely different conclusions here. I won't do so out of deep humility here. We'll let the president continue, though.
Today that there's still, Iran says there's significant differences.
Well, there could be. Let's see what happens. If there are, we'll have to straighten it out, but I don't think there's too many significant differences.
On the blockade, Mr. President, what will it take to end the blockade?
When the agreement is signed, the blockade ends. As soon as the agreement gets signed, that's when the blockade ends.
Now, I did get a question from a viewer via email over the last week asking if I could do anything about the airplane noise in the background that's always really, really, really loud when the president answers questions on the tarmac. The short answer to that is AI makes him sound like Wall-E from Pixar. So it's not quite that easy. And it's just one of the worst parts of the trade, unfortunately. I'm sorry the extra noise is annoying, but the president's saying, look, this is over when they sign. They got to sign. They got to give up the nuclear dust, give it up, and of course, open the Strait of Hormuz. Now, a different group from the IRGC, because again, the IRGC had put out a statement today at 1 p.m. Eastern saying that civilian vessels are permitted to transit through Iran's designated route, which is also changing all of the time now because Iran laid a couple of dozen mines and they didn't anchor them. So you remember in Finding Nemo when the Marlin and Dory, they show up at the old rusted sunken ship and they talk to the sharks, fish all friends, not food, that kind of a thing. Remember, it was in a minefield and all of those mines were suspended in the middle of the water on chains. They are anchored because the ocean kind of moves, things like to be current over on the ocean side. And when mines drift, you get explosions in places you really didn't want explosions. Essentially, it's kind of like a suicide bomb training camp. Sometimes you get unintended kabooms. So in this instance, the Iranians are trying very, very hard to help craft navigate through the water because the last thing the Iranians want to do is lead a Chinese container ship. Again, President Xi's administration has already just had it up to here with the Iranians. They have picked the losing horse, and now they are forced to sit there and watch the Indiana University basketball team be disappointing yet again. Anyway, that's kind of what China's feeling towards Iran in this instance. And so when we're looking at the really bizarre Chinese Iranian situation, they don't want to lead a Chinese or even another international boat through a mine, so they're changing. So the IRGC had said one thing. They said, okay, hey, here's what we're going to do. You got to require a little bit of permission. You got to go this way, but everyone's free. Now Iranians appear to be reaching out to ships that check in and just telling them to turn around, do a little U-turning.
Iranian Navy, this is Bhagyalakshmi. Go ahead, sir. I read you loud and clear.
So this is the Rakhya Lakshmi. I believe in India that translates in Hindi to big boat. They say, hey, this is the big boat. Please let us through the strait. And the IRGC responds rather perturbed. Now, again, if you were the radio guy for the Iranian Navy, you'd have this issue too. We got to bring the radio crew back from commercial. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast
Iranian Navy,
on
this is
93
Bhagyalakshmi. Go ahead, sir. I
WYBC.
read you loud and clear.
Pass from that is forbidden, and there is no any permission for you use from over the strait.
I love that. There is no permission for you. You will return the U-turn in the strait. Excellent. You know, with just a little more training, that guy's English, he could probably qualify as an American semi-driver. So there's a lot of confusion between the different members of the Iranian parliament right now. The head of the Iranian parliament, Baghir Ghalibaf, has now stated that Trump made up a bunch of the negotiated agreements, which again is really, really bizarre because, again, a different Iranian foreign ministry spokesperson had already come out and agreed to a couple of what the president had set up as kind of the standards here to open the Strait of Hormuz. So now he's suggested that, no, we're not going to deliver any enriched uranium outside the country. The United States is also going to compensate for the losses and damages. Like, the U.S. is going to get out Uncle Sam's debit card and pay for, like, reparations. Yeah.
Nope.
Also, a naval blockade is considered a violation of the ceasefire, so Iran will take the necessary steps in response. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's real special, exciting. There's so much confusion here because the IRGC was trying to govern with this the will of Allah, and it turns out Allah has done jack squat. And in the classic deluded Islamic fashion, where they believe that if they just do their root and tootinest, then Allah will conquer those dirty Christians of the West. Nope. And so the Iranians can kind of like blow some muster and bluster here, but at some point either the IRGC is going to attempt to assassinate Pezekian or President Pez Dispenser, going to attempt to assassinate one of the foreign ministers and then blame it on Israel, the Mossad, or the United States or somebody, just so that you know that's what's going to be the narrative. Number two, the IRGC, there's going to be some information given to the United States or other Gulf allies about where certain IRGC officials that are being really freaking annoying are, and then they'll be removed. You'll have some internal regime strife. So that's probably what's coming next. It'll be interesting to see what happens when everyone returns for the class reunion of negotiations at Islamabad in Pakistan on Sunday morning. And this brings us to the most important crew of all here, NATO. That's right, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Remember? You have Keir Starmer, we're not going to get the UK involved in such a pointless and needless adventure. And then you had Emmanuel Macron, who spent an entire press conference simping for Islam, because, well, to be fair, France is pretty much an Islamic state at this point anyway, and screwed over the UAE by sending Malta-flagged craft under French directives in kind of a backroom deal with Iran, which upset the UAE, which ended up carrying out a small strike with some of their small air force against an Iranian island in the midst of all of this. Well, now here they go. NATO is here, guys. After they have said no, even though we get a ton of our jet fuel and other kinds of petroleum products from the Strait of Hormuz. Well, I mean, we're not going to help you Americans. You're supposed to prop up us up. You know, we're not supposed to help you. And then if the United States said anything, they'd say, hey, remember that one time in Afghanistan 24 years ago? When the French and the UK, they did some stuff, absolutely. And then the Spanish also came in and screwed everything up because the Spanish military has been a joke since we bent them over our knees during the Spanish-American War. Anyway, the NATO crew has finally come forward now that things are rolling to a close. As soon as the Strait of Hormuz was open for business and ships were sailing through the strait, Keir Starmer gets up and says, actually, we were about to do something. and we stand ready to do things with boats and men and allegiance. We are NATO. Kind of homosexual, but also sort of here anyway.
We're very clear that...
So for the record, he said we're very clear, not we're very queer. Just to make sure that we get that. I just want to make sure. It's very difficult to understand him, and both of those things are true as far as the prime minister is concerned. But we don't have live captioning for the prime minister, so I wanted to make sure that you made that perfectly standard.
The mission that we're putting together is a defensive mission and that comes after a ceasefire. So that's why we brought the international group together to indicate how we will play our part. And there are a number of elements. First, to deliver the diplomatic push for peace.
Oh, the diplomatic push for peace. Yeah. Okay. Hey, you guys remember? Okay, Steve, show me how many times that's worked in the Russian-Ukrainian war. Man. What about all the other conflicts that NATO has resolved through diplomatic pushing? That would be 0.
Based on the fundamental principle that the strait should be reopened immediately with no tolls and no restrictions. Second,
so this is essentially
that
the
we
teacher,
need to manage the economic shock.
This is essentially the teacher trying to get the bully to stop bullying another kid by appealing to his better sense of moral nature. Like, hey, you know what? Saying mean things is mean. Keeping the Strait of Hormuz closed, that's it. That's for everyone. We're supposed to share that. You should really open it back up. It means nothing. So Captain was going to do defensive capabilities. No. The British, the Italians, the Germans, and the French have finally showed up to deliver one of the absolute lamest garbage. Here comes the poor, mislighted, lopsided cavalry. So Keir Starmer, and then, of course, Friedrich Merz, Emmanuel Macron, and Maloney, who has been quite the disappointment lately. They're all ready to contribute. They're ready. They're going to send a naval mission now that the United States Navy has, done the blockade, and that the Iranian Navy is at the bottom of the ocean. And they haven't even said, hey, we're going to escort our ships through the water, which was what Trump called for them to do. Now, Friedrich Merz said a lot of the same stuff. Now he's ready to talk tough. The French and the Germans, they got to talk tough now that someone else has fought stuff out for them. Like every time in the last 200 years.
Ein dauerhaftes Ende dieses Krieges zu erreichen.
So he says Iran must end its nuclear program, it's got to stop attacking Israel and the Gulf states, and it must reopen the Strait of Hormuz reliably, permanently, and without any form of payment. Where was this a month ago? Where was it? Where what? Again, late to the party, useless as always. And funnily enough, right after the United States, President Trump, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Joint Chiefs of Staff Raisin Kane, and then, of course, our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, made it clear, well, tell you what, if you're so special, Europe, and you can do things like a big boy on your own, well, then we won't send any more weapons over to Scandinavia and the Baltics, and you can go ahead and build some IKEA furniture and call it a day. See if that stops Putin from doing whatever it is he wants to do. Best of luck to you there, sailor. And now the Europeans are like, oh, get the boats, quick. Excellent. Trump pointed this out in Arizona this evening.
And now that the Hormuz Strait situation is almost over, I received a call from NATO asking if we would like some help. Thank you very much, NATO. And I told them I would have liked your help 2 months ago, but now I really don't want your help anymore.
So, again, have to see how some of these things fill out, but very interesting updates. And again, Europe did this to themselves. Radio crew, we're going to send you guys over to the commercial side of things. We're going to continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, in other rather interesting news, again, just because this stuff hurts me, I figured it would be important enough, perhaps, to also cause you some indigestion as well. Christiane Amanpour over at CNN, in covering all of this, has made a sizable boo-boo. I think we have the B-roll clip. We might not. I'll share it with you. Christiane Amanpour over at CNN, that's also retweeted by Brian Stelter, has now, while criticizing the Pentagon, claimed to be a major, as in an officer in the military, the old golden oak leaf, a major. Here's what she said. She's complaining, of course, about the way the Pentagon dares speak to journalists. She says, using the Pentagon podium to lash out at journalists in extreme biblical terms is unprecedented, misguided, and frankly wrong on the substance. Ever since Sunday school Catholic classes, I have been well aware of the scribes and the Pharisees. They were the bad guys against Jesus, the good guy. Yes, that's well done. Yeah, those Sunday school classes were a great investment. Good work. Excellent. Next week for the bonus round, maybe for the
answer there, the Daily Double.
Maybe for the Daily Double, you can tell us what substance Jesus walked on. If you're really feeling, trivia ready there. Anyway, she says, bearing witness to the truth is what we journalists are commanded to do without fear nor favor. So it would be without fear or favor. It's either or, neither nor. Anyway. I'm also well aware of the 10 Commandments. Yet again. CNN star reporter Christiane Amanpour, she's here, she's ready to go. And therefore urge any government radical anywhere to follow the 9th commandment against bearing false witness. Ooh. So she's saying, hey, the 10 Commandments say don't be a liar. Quote, and finally, an observation. The current Secretary of War, or what should be known as Defense, that's what she says, not me, it's Secretary of War. But anyway, left the military with the rank of Major. I, Christiane Amanpour, recall my dog tag in the first Gulf War had the rank of Major. ... The very same rank. Just saying, apostrophe, exclamation point. So first of all, now I've known a lot of conventionals. That's what those who have done some fun contracting things often call those who have served to the stars and stripes. I have known quite a few of the conventionals who have shown me their dog tags. I have had the displeasure of holding a pair of dog tags for those who are no longer with us. There's nothing about your rank on the dog tags, first and foremost. But anywho, that's not the biggest issue though. She never served in the military at all. Christiane Amanpour over at CNN has never served in the military. There's no record of this whatsoever. Nothing. So in the same post where she is arguing that the Pentagon needs to be super duper honest, she's doing a little stolen valor. I was the major during the first Gulf War. It said so on my dog tag. Oh, okay. That's real special. Special Agent Super Duper Sergeant Tim Walls. Thanks for sharing. Were you also on the combat troop in Italy? Just, you don't have to do this, but I do want to point out, you don't hate the media enough. Now, this is the same CNN who stands by the reporting of all of their super duper reporters. Beautiful. All right, we got to bring the radio crew back from commercial, and then we're going to talk about the sexual scandals all the way over from a little bit more on the Swalwell stuff to the Utah Supreme Court. And this one could get really ugly. Involves from redistricting stuff. Then we're going to go over to Brandon Gill. Don't go anywhere. A lot of stuff tonight. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
The Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. I'm going to be fair. I probably shouldn't have used closer as the bumper for this. Probably should have used the police. Don't stand too close to me. The Eric Swalwell stuff is going to be an albatross about the necks of House Democrats for a very long time. And it's not really because Eric Swalwell himself is a person committed, again, according to the information, the evidences that are coming out, not just a series of groping women other than his wife. 17 years younger than him and on his staff, but also may have participated in multiple Bill Cosby-style roofying date rapes. Which, again, we'll have to see how that plays out. That's wild enough on itself. That is not necessarily what's going to be the albatross around Democrats next. It's not unusual when you have individuals in power, in Congress, in corporate business, in Hollywood, to get into these kinds of insanely horrible scandals where they do terrible things. Right? The capacity to do evil, true evil, is in each and every one of us. That is the truth. However, Eric Swalwell is an albatross around House leadership's and the Senate leadership's neck, because not only was this kind of an open rumor for a long time, and Americans are kind of tired of going through the Harvey Weinstein and then the Jeffrey Epstein and then the Diddy cases. Like, they're tired of all of that, of course. But they paraded Eric around like he was just the best, amazing, super awesome fighter man. Western Lensman over on X provides a lot of clips and compilations. He keeps a lot of records. You guys know I'm a sucker for some receipts. Practically a fan of CVS for that reason alone. But here's Hakeem Jeffries, a little compilation. I believe it starts back in September of 23. Just talking about how amazing, just that Eric Swalwell is just so amazing.
Very.
2, I think this is. There we go.
Throughout his time in Congress, Eric Swalwell, who's both a friend and a classmate, has been a champion for the rule of law, a champion of accountability, a champion of free and fair elections.
Excuse me, this is September 25, not 23.
And a champion of the American way of life. Eric Swalwell.
I love it. Oh, I sure do. I mean, I see, Jamie Raskin, discount car salesman from the 50s. I see, of course, Eric Swalwell trying to stand there and look dignified. And I'm pretty sure that's Jasmine Crockett. Also a lady of... Yeah, you got old Jasmine Crockett, in case anybody has to ask some questions. Really good stuff. And then, of course, Hakeem Jeffries praising Swalwell like William Shatner doing an Obama impression.
Is the son of a police officer, comes from a law enforcement family.
Oh, yeah.
Has a distinguished track record as a prosecutor.
As a prosecutor.
Eric Swalwell knows what it means to actually advocate for law and order. And Eric Swalwell knows what lawlessness and disorder looks like.
Oh, gee. Here was Hakeem Jeffries today. Note the question, and then note how he responds.
Some within your leadership have said that they were not aware of the allegations against Swalwell until that San Francisco Chronicle story last week. Yet there are other Democratic lawmakers who have said they have heard rumors for years that he was flirtatious and a womanizer. So
again, I love that there were rumors he was flirtatious. No one tells rumors like that. No one tells rumors like this at all. No one does. No one does that. That's not rumor worthy. Oh, he's kind of flirty. I'm not so sorry to tell you about this at all. The rumors, that's not how people do it. It's like, he's just kind of grumpy. That's not a rumor. That's just a description. He was a womanizer. Well, then what kind of a womanizer? Are we talking like Sean Connery? Is it that kind of a, flirting? Well, that kind of womanizing? Or is it, the kind of rapey womanizing? That would be asked. If someone says, oh, they're a womanizer, what do you immediately ask for? Details.
You specify what you knew, and if you did not know about those characterizations or rumors about him, shouldn't you have known as leader?
Now, that's a good question. Finally, after asking, kind of being silly, we get around to the real, actual journalism. I'm as shocked as you are. So the question, two-parter, right? Number one, did you know? And number two, Mr. Super Duper House Minority Leader, you're the leader of the Democrat Party. It sure ain't Ken Martin in Minnesota, and it ain't Chuck Schumer. This is your guy, unless you want to bring back Kamala Harris again. She's too busy licking gas stations in Charlotte. So, Hakeem, should you have known? It's a good question. Do you know what's going on around you? Are you perceptive? Or are you walking around like the lady from like Bird Box or whatever, with like the blindfold over her face all the time?
I learned about the allegations the same way that the overwhelming majority of people learned about the allegations, which was the San Francisco Chronicle article, and it was shocking We issued a statement immediately.
Do you really think that the San Francisco Chronicle did not reach out to Ruben Gallego, best buddy with Eric Swalwell or Hakeem Jeffries, the leader, not just, again, of the Democrat wing in the House, but also, like, again, you've seen the clips. He and Eric Swalwell were tight. Eric Swalwell was like the attack dog to go after Trump and everyone else, to like mix it up a little bit in committee hearings. That was their guy to do it with. So you think the San Francisco Chronicle didn't reach out? When I wrote articles back when I was doing the investigative column work, as opposed to now I'm acting as a national correspondent for the Daily Signal. But at the time when I was doing investigative column work, when you get to the end of an article, especially if there's an allegation, I'm sending out questions here, there, everywhere. If it involves an education story, I'm asking congressmen. That means representatives and senators. I was reaching out to the White House. I was reaching out to teachers union contacts. I was reaching out to state officials. You're telling me that San Francisco Chronicle didn't reach out to Hakeem over this one? Really? I don't know about that.
As it relates to the situation that was unfolding, that statement strongly speaks for itself. My current view of the situation is that there are ongoing criminal investigations.
Okay.
Those investigations need to be swift and comprehensive, should follow the facts, apply the law. And
I love it. It avoids the question. Answer, should you have known? Voids it completely. Now, this is going to continue to be an albatross about their neck because as long as you have other Democrats in the House who are on camera or have records shown, again, like Sheila Shirphyllis McCormick, who allegedly defrauded FEMA and then threw that money into her own campaign. Literally what Americans would say is like the kind of corruption exclusive for a congressman. If you told if you had a Marvel superhero movie, I'm pretty sure that one of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans, for the record, involves a congressman at some point somewhere in there who took money from a federal agency like Disaster Relief Poor Children to finance his own campaign. Like, that is classic Hollywood villain stuff, or at least it used to be. And she's still there. She hasn't been expelled. She hasn't resigned. She's still here. Stacey Plinkett Plaskett Blanco, the lady who took text directions from Jeffrey Epstein after all of the pedophile stuff, after all the sexual trafficking allegations, took those instructions while questioning Trump officials, asking, what should I ask the Trump official to trip him up? Jeffrey was telling her, like, don't chew, don't swallow right now, quit eating, put the food down, fatty, focus. Like, she was taking the instruction. He's still there. What Republicans really don't have for the albatross here is that the goofball down in Texas who had an affair, he's resigned. George Santos booted him. Guys on the Republican side of the aisle who get caught doing these things, this is the one time where you can actually say that Republicans act principles and it's principled and Democrats always stick together. This is the one time that that's actually kind of effective. The one time. And of all the places and all the things right now, it's the media who seems to be carrying the water. Now, that's not going to last forever, for sure. You know, especially if you have people like super duper Sergeant Captain Major Christiane Amanpour, you know, trying to do the reporting on these kinds of things. Meanwhile, it's even worse over in Utah. And the reason I say it's even worse is because this would be a case that involves not just kind of the personal campaign and scandal and information regarding Eric Swalwell. No, this would be a conflict of interest that went really, really, really overboard. Utah Supreme Court Justice Diana Hagan has been caught allegedly trading sexually inappropriate texts with attorney David Raymond while he litigated a very high-stakes redistricting case right in front of her. According to the reports, her own ex-husband blew the whistle on their secret affair. Good on him, by the way. She still ruled to strike down the maps and force new congressional districts on the state. That is the outcome that David Raymond wanted. Now, Governor Spencer Cox of Utah and top legislative leaders have now launched a full investigation into the corruption in this particular instance. So we basically have like Fannie Willis Part 2 Electric Boogaloo, but it's worse. Again, it's with a Supreme Court justice. Radio crew will send you guys over to the commercial side. We'll come back over on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Now, continuing here. So she's a former federal prosecutor, Diana Hagan, and a Utah Court of Appeals judge originally. It's what she had done previously. Governor Spencer Cox appointed her to the Utah Supreme Court in 2022. Now, we don't talk enough about the really crappy appointments to higher courts that a lot of governors and presidents throw just abject garbage onto the bench. Again, whether we're talking about, Ketanji Brown Jackson, or given her belief that all text is evolutionary and malleable, and there's context, like Amy Coney Barrett. There does really need to be a bit of a higher bar that we set for who we're appointing to judges. Just because you've served on a lower court doesn't make you special. Experience is great. It's very important. But as Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court has pointed out, you probably should read things before you actually move forward with moving up to higher benches. So as a reminder on the redistricting case side of things, because this really could get interesting. I don't know if the Supreme Court of the United States has the authority to strike down a Utah Supreme Court case. Two of you have asked me that today. I have no idea. I have reached out to two friends of mine, including Governor Cox's office in Utah. Hey, how does this work? Who would overthrow this? I haven't gotten an answer back yet. I've gotten hey, we've gotten your message, we're looking. No one really knows right now. If there's a conflict of interest case, would the case be retried? Or would there be a re-examination of the material? Because it's not just how she ruled, it's the questions that she would have asked from the bench of the Supreme Court in Utah about redistricting that may have influenced the opinions of the other judges. Part of being a lawyer is the strategy of how you advocate your case. So again, very, very strange stuff here, for sure, bar none. So the actual 2024 case issued a ruling in which Hagan joined, striking down aspects of Republicans' congressional redistricting plan. So there were challenges to draw some maps, and the League of Women Voters, Utah, other groups argued that the legislators' maps violated the law. David Raymond was the chief counsel for the League of Women Voters and was one of the plaintiff attorneys in the case. Now, the ruling led to a map that was redistricted, but many argued, this is according to Fox News framing on it. I've looked at the maps. I do believe they are more favorable to Democrats, but I'm trying to read this to you from the source. Many viewed the map that was ruled upon as being more favorable to Democrats. And one congressional seat flipped from Republican to Democrat control ahead of the 2026 midterms. So, of course, you have many Republicans arguing this is a case where the judge got a little bit of the old make-out point goodness in order to basically sell out the state of Utah. So it's an independent investigation. Senate President Stuart Adams and House Speaker Mike Schultz, who I do know, and is a very good guy, they are investigating this. That investigation launched today. Obviously, judicial ethic, public trust, those kind of questions. There is going to be an increasing amount of public ire toward these incidents. These are going to be more common. So just so you're aware, we got to bring the radio crew back from commercial one more time, and then we get into the amnesty nonsense. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Don't go anywhere. See you in a second.
The Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. There's a huge fistfight happening on the floor of the House right now, and the Democrats are kind of there, sort of. I don't quite know how to explain that it's not the House Democrats right now that matter. It doesn't appear that they have anything at all to do with the kind of rhino Republican kind of fight, the moderate Republican fight. And it's not even limited to the coasts. So you have Representative Don Bacon from Nebraska. Again, over Omaha, I believe, is Nebraska's 2nd district. You guys can correct me if I don't have the map right there. And then, of course, Mike Lawler, we've talked about before, a Republican of New York. He's known for being a more moderate Republican. Representative Maria Salazar of Florida, who is receiving a lot of flack right now. They helped push forward an effort to grant a renewal of temporary protected status to migrants from Haiti. And this has upset a lot of people. The reason it's upset a lot of people is because this isn't even a case you can make where the Trump administration or whether Congress is trying to take away temporary protected status from the Haitians. This is simply the temporary protected status that has already run its course and is set to expire. As in, it's been a while. Now it's time to go home. You're here, the crisis has, is either abated or it's time for you to return home. And so there were Democrats who put forward this motion with a couple of Republicans with the argument of trying to suggest that the reason Haitians needed to stay is not just because Haiti is a war-torn, terrible place. That, again, there were some cannibals and now maybe there's not, and maybe it's kind of calmed down. That doesn't even have anything to do with it. According to Representative Don Bacon, the reason that Congress super duper needs to absolutely, no questions, no ifs, ands, buts, or coconuts here. The reason that Congress needs to bring the temporary protected status for Haitians through a renewal process is because we need cheap labor. Not joking. According to his tweet today, 2 days ago, quote, removing temporary protected status for Haitians living in the United States would cost 350,000 workers their ability to work at a time when we are already facing serious workforce shortages. I've heard from healthcare providers and business leaders across Nebraska, including the Omaha Chamber of Commerce. We'll talk about chambers of commerce in a second, who are very concerned about the impact this would have on patient care and our economy. I don't see the goodness of deporting people who are here legally working and contributing to our country. So we'll get to the legal status of things here in a second because Brandon Gill ripped this entire thing to shreds. I want to point out something else before we send the radio crew over to the commercial side of things for the evening. And by the way, to the radio and the TV crews, you should head to youtube.com/Daily Signal and watch this interview with Brandon Gill. It's excellent. There's a reason he's been all over social media this week. But the Chamber of Commerce thing, there is this argument that a lot of representatives make, and I've had this conversation with a lot of representatives in the last couple of weeks, especially on the Dignity Amnesty Act and this desire to renew the TPS, the temporary protected status of Haitian migrants, which the House did pass by one vote, by the way, and sent it over to the Senate. And Trump's going to veto that, by the way. But the reason this is important, the Chamber of Commerce thing, there is this weird argument that has come out of a lot of the kind of corporate right. And you hear this echoed by the Cato Institute, a lot of libertarian organizations, that no one wants to work manufacturing jobs. No one wants to work hospital cleaning jobs. Nobody wants to work hotel cleaning jobs or what would be considered low-tier service industry work. And so the answer, instead of maybe having a company that is better to work for, and yeah, maybe you have to increase prices. Americans have, not only via the polling data, but by the election in 24, have said, yes, we are willing to take higher prices if we're not importing cheap foreign slave labor. And again, you've obviously heard the argument that I've made before, that this keeps us from innovating because what the South ran into during its slave period was the North was advancing via technology very, very, very quickly, adopting practices from the United Kingdom, who was not importing tons of labor, but was building tons of machines to change how humans worked. The North was doing the same, and the South said, nah, we'll just do more of the slavery. Like, that's the way to do it. And the South fell drastically behind. This is what is being argued by the representative of Nebraska's 2nd, Don Bacon. And the Chamber of Commerce thing, the Omaha Chamber of Commerce, in Indiana, we have the Indianapolis Chambers of Commerce, that carries some kind of special outsized weight with representatives. And I've thought about this for a long time, and it's bothered me. And in a conversation with a chief of staff for a representative who has asked that I not name him by telling me this, the reason that representatives, and this is according to him, telling me this off the record, but as a prominent congressman, the reason that chambers of commerce are given outsized speaking ability with a representative is because the chambers of commerce are always the ones who are calling and visiting and communicating with them. I'm not joking. that sounds like an after school special thing. That's the argument he gave. Now, we're going to continue on the live stream and get into the really rough parts here. Radio crew, take care. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Oh, I'm a minute early. It's 7:56, not 7:57. Gee whiz, Tony, put the glasses back on. Sorry, that was a little fake out. So the chambers of commerce believe and do have an outsized, you say, oh, are they making a ton of donations? There are some endorsements flying around. Yes, there are some donations. But really, the most engaged members constantly knocking on their door happens to be the chambers of commerce. And I know this because after having a conversation for a half an hour with a representative, Marlon Stutzman, for example, who is a co-sponsor of the Dignity Act, by the time we were done with that conversation, since that conversation, 2 of his talking points on the issue have changed. These things can be done. We're going to talk about this a little bit more. Now we're going to send the radio crew over to the end of commercial. Sorry about that. We'll see you guys on Monday. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Gee whiz. Doing my best out here, but sometimes that ain't enough. So I do want to hit you with this excellent statement in this interview from Brandon Gill, from Erica Kirk, the widow of Charlie. She addressed this specifically just in the last 48 hours, I believe, is when this video is from. I think she hits it far better on the head than I do.
If you look around the world right now, Europe has surrendered itself to third world criminals, and under the Biden administration, we were on track for that for ourselves. But President Trump came in and course corrected. In countries like Nigeria, radical Islamists are murdering Christians for their faith. In Canada, they'll tell you you're better off getting medically assisted suicide than believing in the sanctity of life.
So why amid all of this? Why amid all of this? When these issues, when the contrast between the United States and other countries who are doing the everybody can come and stay and do whatever, and you can have all these benefits, and I mean, we're just gonna make all of the exceptions, all of the special rules, our citizens won't mind, just come on over, you can have everything and keep doing it, you don't have to assimilate. Why now are there Republicans in office in districts where, according to the polling in their own districts, the voters don't feel this way? Why do we have that issue? Representative Brandon Gill of Texas 26 joins us. So the Dignity Act, we've got, of course, Representative Don Bacon talking about TPS status for Haitian migrants because we need cheap factory labor. Brandon, what do you think?
And that's exactly what this is. And you can talk to I talk to a lot of my colleagues who support these essentially mass amnesty bills, and that's oftentimes what it boils down to. It boils down to lobbyists who come to Washington or come to Capitol Hill, and they explain to members of Congress that we won't have a nursing sector if we don't have infinity Haitian illegal aliens who get amnesty in our country. Our nursing system will collapse. We can't run manufacturing. We can't do anything in the United States without infinity immigration. And at some point, it's just deeply insulting. The idea that we need basically to import serf labor in order to have a stable economy is absolutely ludicrous. But that's exactly what this is. Occasionally, you'll hear advocates of these amnesty programs saying that, the national manufacturers group supports this, or the national whatever trade organization supports this, and my response is always, of course they do, because they want cheap labor.
And it's a really bizarre thing because I'm also told that Americans wouldn't work these jobs. Americans wouldn't work in a canning plant in Omaha, which just so happens to be Republican Representative Don Bacon's district, right? Yeah, Nebraska too. And it just so happens that after a lot of illegal immigrants were arrested and then set for deportation from that canning facility, all of these American citizen applications started showing up. Well, wow.
Yep, that's exactly right. It's just a law of supply and demand and labor. Whenever you flood the country with cheap labor, wages go down, jobs are replaced. It's really simple. But the other problem, I think, with mass immigration from places like Haiti is that if you look at the non-citizen Haitian-headed household population in the United States, which is predominantly the population that's covered by temporary protective status, which we just voted to extend, 65% of them are on welfare. And if you back up a little bit, the question we ought to be asking ourselves in Washington is, does mass migration from Haiti or any other country benefit the United States? And in this case, the answer is obviously no. I mean, have you ever heard, and I think this is something we all intuitively know, because have you ever heard any American say, you know what, gee, I wish there were more illegal alien Haitians in my neighborhood? Of course not. Nobody's ever said that, because we all know that this is absolutely ludicrous. But remember, the purpose of our immigration system is to benefit the American people. And to the extent that it doesn't, we have no obligation to allow anybody into our country. And we certainly have no obligation to perpetually allow illegal aliens to stay in here.
I mean, of course, I'm admiring the pearl clutching, the sheer audacity of Representative Maria Salazar coming out and making the case that, well, actually, the Dignity Act, they need dignity. You know, it sounds like left-wing Jennifer Welch pearl clutching. You assign an adjective or a noun as your magical word, and then you stuff a bunch of garbage underneath it. And again, I mean, obviously, it's frustrating looking at the situation regarding how wonderful and full of dignity and amazing joy and incredibleness that the TPS Haitian migrant situation is. But by that metric, a lot of these places that these immigrants are coming from, they must be amazing places. I mean, judging by how they're describing the Haitian migrant community here in the country, Haiti must be a thriving, amazing place of such industry.
That's exactly the point, you know. At some point, you can kind of judge what mass migration does to a country by looking at the country that all these people are coming from. That's the civilization that they built. Do we want that civilization imported into the United States? And everybody in the country with a brain says, no, we don't. So why in the world Washington wouldn't pick up on that, I think is the much more disgraceful part. But, you know, you're right. You talk about the Dignity Act in all of these. I think that it is, in this context, after the last election cycle, for anybody, on Republican or Democrat, but especially Republicans, to be pushing amnesty bills is disgraceful. It really is.
And to be pushing it through on the argument that, what we have to. I mean, I'm sure this is what you voted for, even though you said we'll gladly pay a slightly higher price or deal with a slight manufacturing labor shortage in some cities because we want national security to be maintained. You know, people agreed to this, but they say, well, I mean, who's going to pick the cotton? Who's going to pick the cotton, Brandon? I mean, I seem to remember that this exact strategy is what kept the South from catching up to the union's manufacturing standards. But I mean, aside from all that, I mean, you and I agree on this. You've had some phenomenal statements on the social media sphere and on other news programs about this. What I want to ask is, at what point do we actually start seeing some of the constituents of these representatives, whether they be Republican or Democrat or whomever, at what point do we actually see them either held accountable in the primary system, or like, where's the moment where the rubber kind of meets the road here? What needs to happen?
Well, a few of these, like Representative Bacon is leaving on his own accord. He's retiring. So, and a few of the others who have voted or have supported the Dignidad Act are as well. So that's one factor. You know, I think that there's a reality here that Congress needs to listen to, which is that the American people overwhelmingly rejected mass migration in the last cycle. That was the central thesis of President Trump's campaign, and it's what gave Republicans a trifecta: the president, the popular vote. And we ought to realize that politically, the Republican Party is not going to be a nationally viable party if we don't listen to our voters. If we run on mass deportations and turn around and give voters amnesty, we're going to completely tear apart the Republican Party, and we're not going to be able to win elections anymore nationally. And candidly, if that's the road we go down, we deserve to lose elections. And I think that's what my colleagues need to recognize.
I think there's a good amount of insight to, again, if there is no fight that's worth having, if as soon as the road gets a little rough, we start going, well, actually, according to procedure, and like the glasses get shoved as far up on the nose as possible. Robert's Rules of Order state. I'm amazed at how often when you push one of these representatives into the corner of there are moral holes, sinkholes, massive craters in the philosophy behind this bill. It's crazy how quickly they run behind the skirt of some very old loophole of the law from 175 years ago that was never meant to be used this way. From the inside, how do you and other representatives that have a pulse, how are you guys trying to kind of push back against this when they're throwing up the awkward nerd from 7th grade trying to argue for more homework routine?
Yeah, you have to kind of cut through the nonsense. And, you have groups like the Cato Institute, which is totally, some open borders, libertarian think tank.
The financial benefits of being stabbed outside a Dollar General, Brandon. Isn't it wonderful?
Exactly. And they will feed just asinine talking points to Republicans. You'll hear things like, well, the Haitians who are in the country right now who are covered under TPS, they're legally here, which is partially true. They're legally here in the sense that temporary protective status, it applies right now. It's expiring. That's the whole debate. The reality is 91% of them came into the country illegally. Oftentimes they were granted either some sort of illegal categorical parole, or they have asylum claims that are either have been adjudicated and have been denied, or all kinds of other things. That's the reality. The reality is that 69% of them came into the United States under Joe Biden, not under, not whenever the Haitian earthquake happened over 15 years ago. These are economic migrants. And by the way, if you live in Haiti, you can just walk across the island to the Dominican Republic. You don't need to come into the United States if you're fleeing anything. So that's, you have to cut through the nonsense. And that's what I've been trying to do with my colleagues.
I mean, it's truly bizarre. Just as a final note here, it's like it's getting caught speeding. The officer pulls you over and then gives you a warning graciously. And then you say, well, this means that speeding is now legal. It's truly bizarre how we've mental gymnastics ourselves into this kind of spaghetti.
It is, and another example of that is, as we were talking earlier, that the nursing home system in the United States is going to collapse if we don't have more Haitians. Well, 65% of these non-citizen Haitian-headed households are on welfare. I mean, don't tell me that this is a core part of the United States economy, or that this in any way makes America stronger. That obviously makes us weaker and poorer by importing people who are hopping on the dole and living off of our expense. And that's what's happening here.
We need to federally undercut through welfare the nursing home industry, and also undercut the housing market as well. Phenomenal. Oh goodness, we could go on this all day, but I know you have a lot of moving votes that are kind of happening really quickly. Brandon Gill, the best representative from Texas. Really great to have you always from the 26th. Thanks for giving us a couple minutes.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we're going to finish tonight with a little bit of bonus tonus mail time. So again, excellent week of a lot of news. I guess just been chaotic. I know a lot of you are exhausted. I know that some of you might be really tired of the stupid. You should be rest assured of a couple things before we get into kind of the mail time of the bonus tonus after the broadcast hour, which some have said, some out there. We'll pull up a quote for you. My favorite part of the show is bonus tonus. I don't know if anyone's ever said that. They might. It's a really good part of the show. The best of the nonsense from this week, there's a libtard folder that producer Jen keeps. She maintains. She trims it like a hedge around the garden of the worst content that she can find to torture me with. And it includes from this week some of the silliest way to spend your time or maybe take foreign checks I've ever seen. So there was some pro-Palestine theater in front of the Capitol today. So not like a protest where they're like, free Palestine. No. Not that level of unemployment. I mean, the theater. Free Palestine, the theater. Behold.
Like the little rat that you are! Get down on the ground!
So you have some young lady who has dressed up in old DPM surplus camo and and then taped an index card that she drew the Israeli flag on to Iran, and they're acting, killing beekeepers, I think. I don't know. Either that or Newcastle High School in Indiana. They went through this phase where they all wore bright white jumpsuits for like a couple of years, and you could always tell when one of them was out in public because it looked like the beacons of Gondor were lit. Anyway, it's theater.
We are the chosen people. This land was promised to us 3,000 years ago.
By the way, that's not the footage on our end that's lagging. This is just a really garbage uploaded video. So I guess it's really, really, really exciting. I know. I'm moved. Are you moved? I say give it a Tony. Not me. I couldn't watch that another minute of my life. But, really weird. Also, a new study on Zoran Mamdani's little state-run grocery store. Remember how, he said, hey, I'm going to spend, tens of millions of dollars to open up this, but $30 million to open up this building. That, by the way, it's not as though they are building the building from the ground up. I don't know if that was clear. Just to make this clear to those of you who, might be so stupid that you record a little podcast and cry about me. You do know that it's a vacant building they're turning into a grocery store. $30 million to turn it into a supermarket. According to a new study, that is 10 times more expensive than Whole Foods per square foot. So Whole Foods, which is already like a little cha-ching kind of a grocery store. I want someone to do a study of how many Aldis you can build for $30 million. Here's, I'm not a teacher anymore, so I can't give you homework. One of you do me the fine favor. Find me someone in the corporate level of Aldi's. Find out how much it usually costs to build an Aldi's. And we'll include the building costs here, because I bet even building the building is going to cost way less than $30 million from Mamdani that he's not just using spare leftover funds for to build this super duper state-run supermarket. Incredible stuff. So that also, again, thank you very much, producer Jen, for just bringing me just the best of the worst. Also, Charlemagne, who is on iHeart Radio or Sirius XM, I don't know. They're the Breakfast Club. Asked Ilhan Omar how she felt after she was done saying that Marjorie Taylor Greene was like really wonderful and Tucker Carlson was really wonderful, which, that should be a tell. But anyway, Ilhan Omar was asked about the hundreds of millions of dollars in fraud in Minnesota and like what she thought the effects for that were. Here's her response.
I think it's now 230 million that has been.
Yes, 250 is what they say.
Yeah.
Misuse funds meant for child nutrition.
Yeah, 230 to 250. There's been about 77 or so.
75 defendants.
That have been indicted. Many of them have taken plea agreements.
That makes it. They got to make it hard for you, right? Just in general, not because you got anything to do with it.
Yeah. Did you see her head twitch? That's got to be hard for you, right? And she's like, that the earring started swinging back and forth like it was a grandfather clock in a pendulum.
Yeah.
But when he can point and say, "Well, this actually happened,"
no, I mean it doesn't make it hard for me, but it does make it hard for the average Somali business owner.
There you go.
Yeah. It makes it hard for the average immigrant business owner. It makes it hard for the average Black.
You know who it probably actually makes it hard on? Those whose money was stolen. What about the people who donated to charities thinking they were feeding children? So again, not just taxpayers' dollars, but also those giving to charities. That is a kind of scamming that cuts to the soul. You think the people who gave to those fraudulent charities, if they really meant well, that they were giving to this charity because they actually thought kids were getting food? Because I guarantee you there were many who did. You think they're just going to go out and give a bunch to charity following this? I would say those, but like, oh man, there might be a Somali migrant kind of whatever. Oh man, it's so special to whatever. Garbage. Complete garbage. Thanks to producer Jen. She's answered my Aldi's question, but I guess AI jumped in, Gemini, to answer this one. On average, the cost to build a new, from the ground up Aldi prototype store typically ranges from $1.5 million to $3 million. Now, total project costs, including the land acquisition, purchasing the lot, site development, zoning, and equipment, often push the total investment from $5 million to maybe $10 million, depending on the location. So still multiple times cheaper than Zoran Mamdani's $30 million state-run renovation, where they don't have to buy the land or build a building. Just crazy stuff. So anyway, all that stuff aside, that brings me over to probably the most painful thing to me for the week, Rosa DeLauro of Connecticut. So Rosa DeLauro of Connecticut is the embodiment of that either 30 Rock or Third Rock from the Sun, that meme of Steve Buscemi in the red backwards hat doing the how do you do, fellow kids? Rosa DeLauro is that meme brought to life. It is the most, watching her, she does all, she's an old lady who looks a lot like the Wicked Witch of the West. I'm just saying, I'm pretty sure she's once modeled for Hansel and Gretel. Just to make that clear. This particular individual never ever stops making just the worst, cringiest, braggadocious content, despite again being ancient and never having done anything for Congress for nobody. I bring you the latest in the, you know what's going to win in the midterms? More influencer crap. So, for the audio listeners, when people ask how I have so much energy, every morning I activate the bob. She's talking about her hair because there was a meme 5 months ago in which people were talking about like the bob haircut, like the Karen Bob haircut. So 5 months after anyone had made this joke, her team recorded her bouncing up and down, again, on your taxpayer dime. Way to go, Connecticut. Yeah, okay. All right, that's real special. And then she lost it in a Homeland Health and Human Services committee screaming about raw milk.
If I were the head of HHS, I would, by God, say, don't take raw milk. It is dangerous to your health. And if you can't say that, well, maybe there's some other conclusions that can be drawn. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Letlow.
So losing her mind over raw milk. Now, as a former science teacher, a couple of things. Yeah, milk pasteurization is good. That's a good thing. It's a good advancement in society. But the idea that raw milk is like the evilest of the evil and it's going to kill you. No, also not. There's also different levels of like the kind of modern purification and stuff. Just like, stop. The pearl clutching over everything, every single thing has to be like Cloud9 scream about it. Raw milk, rah! Sounded like Miss Fowl from Jimmy Neutron. Ugh, the pain. I will give you one good thing before mealtime. One thing that I actually do like. The White House released a little edit of the President of the United States, and it was just captioned, "Let him cook," regarding, again, 48 days to completely eviscerate Iran's ability to impose its will on the Middle East and the broader world. Dire straits, money for nothing.
You are watching a master at work.
That's good. I do. I like this. That's good stuff. Yeah, good. Yeah, let him cook. And also, one of the best openings to any song. Crazy that song is just a H.H. Gregg commercial where the guy also decides to also make fun of dudes who are rather gay. Just, Dan, what a wild time that the rise of the modern music industry was. So good stuff there. All right, now I've put it off. Time for a little mail time. Mail time.
Mail time. On the Tony Kinnett Cast.
All right, a little bit of mail time this evening. Just from me to you. Some of these I have taken a little bit of time to do some extra research on. The best way to get these in front of my face is in the Discord. Links in the description. Every show's got to have a little mail user engagement kind of a segment. Not claiming to be super duper original or special here. We're very transparent with you on the Tony Kinnett Cast, and hopefully we'll continue to do so. I did take a little bit of time to answer a question on by a guy named Kel on what I thought on our glorious tax day about the fair tax. So the fair tax, House Bill 25, it's a proposal to replace all federal income, payroll, corporate, and estate taxes with a single national retail sales tax. So no other kind of major taxes, except you would have 23%, or again, if that's tax inclusive, or 30% if it's tax exclusive on new goods and services. And then there would be, to kind of offset, like a 20% tax on the stuff that you're paying for. A monthly prebate to cover taxes on necessities called up to the poverty level. In other words, if you're poor enough, you don't have to pay the sales tax. I'm going to be, and also the best part of it, it eliminates the IRS. I think that the reformation of the tax system in this country is absolutely necessary. Wholly agree with it. My answer to this, though, is that first of all, the United States should tell you what you owe for tax day and why. It shouldn't be a guessing game. I hate that. It shouldn't be a fluid thing. They should tell you how much it is that you owe. It should be a very set and specific and simple thing. Number two, I think that the bulk of the federal spending on programs, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security should be gone. It should be privatized. I think it should be phased out. It will crash this economy. We spend more on those benefit programs. You wouldn't be able to give benefits to illegal migrants in the country if there were no federal benefit programs. If the states want to do it, the states can do it. The states can do it. I don't see why the federal government needs to do it. The idea that, like, well, I've put money into it forever. Okay, great. We'll phase it out. You can keep getting the benefits. I and a lot of people in my generation, the last of the millennials, and then even more in Generation Z, who know they're never going to see it because it's not going to happen. And though there's not like so many illegals and fraud in it that if you took that all away, oh, it would just be amazing and perfect. Though those studies have been debunked. Sorry. The fair tax, it's kind of a pipe dream. It's not going anywhere. My opinion is it would be a lot easier to simplify the tax system and cut out most of the entitlement spending. And then again, it encouraged the culture to pick up the slack is the answer. That's the answer, by the way. The idea that the state is just forever going to be mommy. Nope. Doesn't work. Temporary state assistance programs, nothing. I'm sorry. They always end up becoming massive behemoths. They don't do what they say they're going to do. They always become bloated and awful. No, sorry. That's my take on that one. I kind of took some time to think of it. It's a cool idea, but it's kind of a pipe dream idea. I don't think it really works. The way that it's been written, I don't think it's going to actually go about. And I think Rizal says it quite well. I've heard about the fair tax almost all my life. Yeah. And yeah, I don't like the IRS, bleep you, give us our money attitude either. I don't disagree. But again, I think that decentralizing the system and making states pull the weight is probably better. It'd be better if you were angrier at your local legislature. And for that, matter also, get rid of the 17th Amendment and go ahead and have states elect the senators directly again, instead of this weird popularity. They're like a representative, but fancier, because that's not what it was built for. So anyway, that side of things. Now, give us your thoughts on the Viktor Orban election in the Eastern European thing. So the left side of the media came out and claimed super duper victory after Viktor Orban was ousted from office. And the guy that replaced him, they tried to find all of these things, say, oh, he's from the left, super duper liberal, except he's not. Essentially, you had a populist running against kind of a classical liberal-ish, sort of conservative in some ways, sort of corporatist in other ways. I mean, the new guy's okay. I've looked through all of his stuff. He's more anti-migration than Orban was. So I'm going to wait to see. But I thought it was really funny how quickly the media abandoned that story, because it wasn't like you had Bernie Sanders, up against moderate right-wing person like in a lot of European countries. So yeah, I mean, my take is it, and I'll again say this: I don't really care about Eastern European countries. I mean, or in Central European countries, I don't care. I just don't. I mean, do I think that Hungarian people have like a rich culture and a history and stuff? Yeah, sure. But I'm not Hungarian, not Austrian, I'm not Polish, I'm not Ukrainian, I'm not Czech, I'm not Slovakian. I'm not a Slav. I don't care. And that's not like you shouldn't ask the question. It is kind of a bigger thing in media, but I think that a lot of other conservative pundits try to make much ado about things that there's not really much ado to do. Like Meloni, like Prime Minister Meloni, like she's still the Italian prime minister when I was told she was like the best thing ever. And she's okay. And the NATO stuff was a good example of how and why. So, yeah. So, that's kind of my take there. Sorry if that's not the best answer, kind of otherwise. What in the world is going on with these missing or dead scientists in the United States? Okay, so I've been planning on answering this one for a while. There are two things that are true at once here. First of all, there is a kind of international espionage game going on where the powers of the world that be are always trying to get the other's most advanced scientists. It is also true that a lot of the stories, and I hate to be the guy to tell you this, like the OANN coverage, who are like, oh, these were all super duper connected and stuff. No. And some of the people that are like, oh, this doctor is like super involved with super nuclear astrophysics. No. Hasn't been connected to any program for like 20 years. Some of them, yes, missing individuals. But the idea these are all like some connected, like, oh, all of our nuclear and astro scientists are all being amazingly whatever. No. I'm not seeing it. I'm not. I've looked through the cases presented. I think there are a lot of outlets right now because they don't want to talk about this, who have made way too big of a deal about the populists that are hyper-isolationists as well, the Tucker Carlsons of the world, who they don't want to criticize because a lot of their base likes, Tucker Carlson, or Candace the retard Owens, who is wrong yet again on the assassin of Charlie Kirk stuff, the Tyler Robinson situation. Well, they've spent all this time, they have to find other things. And the influencer game is about proposing like the biggest clickbaity things. My team talk about this all the time because we have evenings, we have weeks where the show doesn't have like people rushing in to go, oh my gosh, what's the news? I got to find out. And it's very tempting to look at it and go, well, if people aren't rushing in to see, the news for today, then we're going to make up we're going to like connect all of these, again, all of these dots. Maybe they're there, maybe they're not. When I see sufficient evidence that these missing scientists and doctors, first of all, when they're all reported on correctly, instead of leaving out key pieces of information as though someone else isn't going to double check their work. When I see a more clearly defined pattern, I'll report on it. So I'm not saying it's not happening. Not saying it's not. But I am going to point out at the same time that you're like, oh, that it's the Jews. Ooh. Stop it. We're being dumb. That brings me to the next question that I've been looking forward to, to answering for a bit here. So this is from a guy over on the Discord, Red Guy, says, I had a conversation recently with somebody about the economy. I don't think that he's super liberal, but he claimed that the economy was only doing really well because of old people. But the economy for young people is still getting worse. As a Gen Zer who's not really super knowledgeable in economics, what do you think he meant by this? And is he right in any way? So the answer is yes and no, and that's not a cop-out. Hear me out for a second. There is a tale as old as time, a famous short essay. Let me pull this up for you. There's an old, so I'm trying to find, there's like a short essay that was popular in the UK and then another popular in the United States. And I have no idea why it's leaving my brain. Essentially saying the older generation always complains about the younger generation. And then the younger generation always ends up shouldering the burden and they end up carrying the torch. So there's a little bit of that to it, kind of tale as old as time. The old generation, well, when I was a yipper-snapper, things were, I worked uphill both ways. That's tale as old as time. Everybody does it. And that's not, high schoolers do that to middle schoolers right now. Like it's not just relegated to generational divides. Number two, it is also true that there are some complaints coming from the conservative younger generations about the liberals of the boomer generation. And then you'll have the conservatives of the boomer generation go, I'm not like that. And that's true. When you have large-scale indictments of generations or pattern psychological analyses of older or younger generations, for example, is a lot of the older they're all eating a bunch of Tide Pods and they're all addicted to screens and all this other kind of thing that you hear from the old to the younger generations. Not all. And that's a big part of it. About the economy, because that's what you asked. It is a verifiable fact that there were a lot of niceties that older generations got to experience in the economy that younger generations do not. And they are different depending on the generation. Boomers got to experience some cultural ease that the younger generations do not. So for example, the days where you'd walk in and you'd shake the hand of the boss and go, hey, I'm here to work. I'll start Monday. Like where that would work, that doesn't work anymore. That hasn't worked for 20 years. And sometimes that advice is given where if you just try, you got to go in there and you got to make an impression. And if you just go to college and you get a degree, then you'll have a job. That's not true. That hasn't worked for years. Quit telling people that. Stop it. That's not a thing. Now, by the way, that's not the older folks' fault. Right now, there's a ton of huge HR companies that are staffed by AI and girly girls that went to college for fun and have no idea what they're doing and are just like mass ignoring tons of applications. It's a huge problem in the country. And that is genuinely a problem for youth. That is, I'm sorry, that's the truth. By the data. And that's something that the older generations didn't have. That boomers at least. Generation X, they had different benefits and they had different problems with the economy. So they didn't have maybe the go-in kind of drive at ease that some of the boomers had. However, they had a different kind of ease to them. And this would be that we just won the Cold War. And the economy was booming because it was very easy to walk in and get a very nice job with next to no education whatsoever and afford a very nice house. However, it is also true that the houses that boomers and Generation X bought were cheaper and smaller than a lot of houses, even starter homes, that the youth is experiencing today. A lot of youths don't really want to go out and buy a lot of smaller homes and starter homes. A lot of them are in disrepair. A lot of them have just been completely fallen down under garbage. And there are some different real estate bubbles. So the answer to your question is, that's what he's getting at. There are some issues like housing. It is an issue. I'm sorry, right now, my wife and I are in the middle of talking about a building project. And to build a simple ranch home in the United States right now, a simple ranch home that a couple of decades ago would have gone for $85,000 maybe. If there is a way that we get that price under $300,000, I will eat my hat, your hat, and anyone else's hat you want. That's the truth of the economy in the market right now. So often there is overscoring, but also there are several studies that have come out in recent months over longer periods of time that show that yes, millennials do have certain things that are far easier than older generations have ever had it. Generation Z as well. So the answer is, as generations change, each new generation has it about as easy and about as difficult as prior generations, and just in totally different ways. And so they complain where the older generation gives them advice based on what they had as an understanding in their current frame of reference and time. And again, it's a very, it's not true to say that the economy is just truly fantastic and amazing and everyone who complains is wrong, or to say, man, the boomers had it really easy and they left us just with garbage. Both of those statements are wrong. It is based on categorization and it changes. Again, also there's the aspect of pioneering in America. People don't move anymore. There was an idea of like, I'm going to leave my parents and I'm going to go to somewhere else, a new place, a new development. I'm going to start a life. American culture is not pioneering anymore. There's no longer any manifest destiny. It's stopped. And now this is a major cultural issue. A lot of the Generation Z have an entitled attitude of, well, I should deserve to live in my hometown where I grew up. I deserve to live here at a reasonable price. You need to artificially lower the price. That's a problem too. Very long, drawn out answer, I know. And I hope that by over explaining all of the different weeds, you understand that it's a genuinely complex issue. But those who I'm sure are in the comments, many of them well-meaning, Nostradamusing and saying, well, actually, it's really, really easy. Everyone's just lazy or everyone else is just bad. No, don't do that. So that said, to the next side of questions and things on that particular point. And, beyond that, everybody's chiming in, that kind of thing. I'm disappointed. So I'd advertised earlier this week. There were some big, huge changes coming to the show, and there are. And though you haven't seen them on the set and things yet, they are coming next week now. One of our providers at the Daily Signal needed an extra week to put on an extra coat of polish on some of the website sides of things, because a huge website change is no small thing, especially when you have a ton of articles. I know when I ran Chalkboard Review, we had to migrate everything from a Squarespace site to a WordPress site. Good sweet heavens, that was a big project. So give us a bit more time. That's coming, I promise. Next couple of questions. Let's see if there's another really stellar side of things here. Any other final questions before we wrap up things this evening? A little bit of mail time at the end of the week, a little more relaxed and kind of slowing things down is good. Look over to the YouTube comments side of things. Dorian, nobody ever promised us a rose garden. That is true. That is absolutely true. So a lot of comments about, all of the phenomenal joys of currencies and real estate and that side of things. I really love reading the comment section and getting a bit of getting a bit of insight from y'all when it comes to the things that you're interested in. I'm sure you heard me ask Scott Pressler about that. Sometimes you kind of get out of the loop. Trey asking what I think about a flat tax. I think that's the solution. The flat tax, that's the answer. The flat tax is the that's definitely the answer. There's another, I think, because again, telling everyone they got to pay 15%, period, no matter what you make, that's great. Because then I don't change what it is that I'm striving to make. And still, the more you make, the more that you pay. I think that's probably more fair. One question from Lisa said, wondering why you didn't cover the Todd Blanche resignation. Todd Blanche did not resign. There might be another individual in the, Todd Lyons, I think, who resigned from the Department of Homeland Security. I think that someone on the Daily Signal may have put out a question on that yet, if they have any comment. I don't have any information for you yet, but with Mark Wayne Mullen coming in, I don't doubt there's going to be some cleaning house and some different prioritizing. I don't really have any. I try not to just cover minor officials, hopping in and out as much until I get more information on it, because otherwise you're in blind speculation. Randy, Tony, what is a woman? The XX chromosomes would be the answer to that. And also, if you're looking for an outside of the chromosomal answer, women and men produce different kinds of hormones. And even if you have someone who would say they have like a chromosomal disorder, a genetic disorder, and they'd be like XXY or something, well, they would still produce a pattern set of hormones that would present as either male or female. So it's a sign, there's a lot of different tells: skeletal and bone structure, water retention, fat deposit, the shape of fat deposits, like how the actual tissues form. So there's your answer there, you Katanji Brown Jackson questioner, you. Another question here, follow up on kind of the hometowns question. Do you think that there's a difference between the artificially lowering the cost of housing versus preventing kind of the artificial inflation of the cost in living middle America? So like big corporations buying up homes and renting them. I think it's both. I think the biggest issue are building regulations. The second biggest issue is, again, there's no pioneering place. There's nowhere to go. Americans are people that need to go and do. And so the reason you have a lot of places that are building these massive additions and buying up houses to rent is that everywhere is the frontier right now. So in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, there was this huge, after the interstate system through all of this traffic through inner cities. James Wesley Rawls talks about this in pretty great detail, albeit in kind of a libertarian novel about a collapse of the currency. But whereas all the way up until the end of the 20th century, the movement towards bigger cities, because that was the place to be, that's where things were growing, that's where innovation was happening. Well, through the housing crisis, everyone was like, wow, all of this crime sucks. And also, all of the joys and wonders of the melting pot of the city, it's not that great. There's a lot of froyo places. That's kind of it. I can only eat Thai so many times in a row. And so then they move out to the suburbs. And so then you saw this reflected in culture, like DreamWorks, literally over the hedge about just suburban America and like the culture of it. That kind of United States became where all these additions moved into. Now you're seeing the suburbanization of smaller town America because there's really no other frontier to go. And it's going to continue until we actually find a frontier. Empires either grow or decline. There's no middle. And so the United States answer really is to be an imperialist country. Sorry, you don't like the answer to that. There is no country that has said, okay, we're done growing, we're just going to do this forever, and didn't decline into the abyss. And Eddie Mora in the movie Limitless, Bradley Cooper gives an explanation there about the fall of the United Kingdom and Portugal. So in kind of a on Adderall rant as he goes, because that's what the movie Limitless is about. It's a metaphor for Adderall. Fun stuff there. We also got a super chat from Greg Kaplitz this evening, a $10 super chat. Said, my first contribution from the People's Republic of Massachusetts. Love the show. That's very, very kind. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you a ton. Let's see here. Any other key questions that I really want to tackle before we're done this evening? Sometimes I just kind of slow down and take a couple of questions here at the end of the end of the show. I think that's it. We've done a pretty good job. Oh, where do I think should be the 51st state? Alberta, to be honest with you. Take Alberta, make it a non-voting territory for 10 years. What are the Canadians going to do? And you could probably make a case that they're just going to kill their own citizens given the Canadian-made program. Also, as I think I've said on the show before, take Cuba, make it a non-voting territory, execute the entire Cuban regime. You served in the Cuban regime, executed. Sorry, not sorry. Or send them to Afghanistan, for fun. Anyway, take Cuba, make it a non-voting territory, and those that are Americans that return to Cuba gain obviously full citizenship and are allowed to help administrate the country for 10 years, 15 years until they can then apply for statehood. And then also give Japan the opportunity to either enter into a vassal state status. I don't think that Japan and Israel should be full-fledged allies. I think they should be vassal states. So I'm just going to say, if we're going to do this kind of a thing, it either needs to be on paper and explicitly stated as like foreign influence is concerned, or we need actually allegiances that actually go both ways in full all the time. So little fun foreign policy edge on the end there. So that all aside, do we have to take British Columbia too? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Build a new interstate system, for that. What's your least conservative position? I think that getting rid of light rail was a huge mistake. I think that the nation needs light rail again. I know that was a disaster and kind of the corporate dealing with properties and things. The one thing that I will always hold against my own state legislature in the state of Indiana until the end of time is that they banned light rail in my state. And I am still mad about it. It was a stupid decision. So, all right. There, I've aired my local grievances as well. So I think that'll do it for the evening. We will see you on Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern, for a great start to the week of news. Take care. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. Take care.